Terry's with us now. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, I tell you, but something about the crowd there. I mean, they were all Tunisians, all speaking Arabic. And I thought, how on earth are we going to get them to say these lines in English? And I thought, well, we'll have to dub it later. So I just shouted out the lines to them in English, and then they shouted them back. And it was fine. We didn't need to do anything.
Fantastic. And it was all in sync as well. It was all, you know, they were all kept together, and it was fun.
They just repeated them perfectly.
Of course, you directed that, didn't you, as well as appeared in it.
Of course, most of the crowd were women, actually. So when Graham appeared naked at the window, we had to send them all off. They sort of
get chucked out of the country.
Yes.
Will there ever be any more Python films, do you think?
I can't think so at the moment. No, I think it's just, I just don't think there's enough, I don't think anyone's got enough time, you know, the five of us left.
But I keep hearing that you're on, what's it called, the Filthy Rich, or the Filthy Rich and Greedy tour that you're organising.
Oh, that might be Eric. Eric, yeah, I think Eric did Eric Idle rips off Monty Python, because we'd agreed to do a tour, and then one of us flaked out of it, so we didn't.
Yeah. So is Eric doing it by himself then?
No, we did one actually. It was very funny. I saw it in New York. It was really good. Good for you, Eric. Good for you. Yeah. No, but he's doing. I think he's planning a musical of the Holy Grail on Broadway.
Fantastic.
Oh right.
He's going to do that.
Good.
Yes.
Well, look.
Just before we leave Life of Brian, isn't it amazing to think that film caused ripples around the world, ripples in the Vatican, street protests, questions in the House, because it was deemed as blasphemous?
Well, it was deemed as blasphemous mainly by people who hadn't seen it, basically.
Yeah.
That's usually the way, isn't it?
There was a councillor in Devon, I think it was, Councillor Pinney, I think his name was, who said he banned the film, or got the council to ban the film. And then somebody pointed out, well, he hadn't seen it. And he said, well, you don't need to see a pigsty to know it stinks.
Great.
Why do you think Chaucer was murdered then?
Well, let me say that, you were saying it's the serious side of me.
No, it's not.
I hope it's not too serious.
No,
just because it's the Middle Ages. They laughed in the Middle Ages as much as we laugh now, you know.
Did you see the new Chaucer series on the BBC series?
I did, actually. Yeah, I saw one of them, yeah.
Oh, I saw most of them. It was fantastic,
I saw the Shipman's Tale, I think it was. And I thought it was really good. I mean, I thought it wasn't really anything to do with Chaucer, because, see, Chaucer takes his story outlines from people like Boccaccio and other writers. And so, actually, they were just taking the story outlines. It was more like a Boccaccio tale than a Chaucer tale, really. But in fact, they were doing exactly what Chaucer would have done, which is making those stories, current for a contemporary audience.
Yeah. So why was he murdered? I come back to my question.
Why do You'll have to read the book. The thing is, it was something that's always been haunting me, the idea that something may have happened to Chaucer. I mean, for 20, 30 years, I've had dark suspicions about his thing. But I thought I'd never get round to actually sort of doing anything about it, because it'd be too long to research and to write it. And then about 5 years ago, I was invited to give a talk at the Chaucer Congress. Yes, there is one, and they hold it every 2 years. And this time it was in Paris. And I thought, well, maybe I'll get this thing off my chest. And I mentioned this to a friend of mine who's a professor of literature in Trinity College Dublin, Terry Dolan, and he said, well, Terry, instead of doing a talk, why don't we hold a coroner's inquest? So that's what we did. He was the coroner, I was the chief accuser, and we got 3 academic friends along to be expert witnesses. And so in 1998...
Like a Rocky Horror Show convention.
And this is but your suspicions were aroused, because in all our written history, Chaucer just winks out like a candle.
Exactly,
we don't know what happened to him. He just vanishes in 1400.
No, there's no record of his death, no official record. It's not mentioned in any of the chronicles. He doesn't leave a will or anything.
And yet he's well documented up to that point.
Oh, absolutely, yes. He's a famous man. He's the most famous writer. He's also a very high-ranking civil servant. He's clerk of the King's work. He's actually inspector of drains and ditches at one point.
Of course he was.
Yes. And he's a spy. He acts as a spy and a diplomat. So he's a well-known man. In fact, he would have been very important for Richard II's court.
So when he died, you would expect to know when, how, where, what from, and where the funeral was held.
Yeah, I mean, things can get lost. But a lot of the people who did die at that time left wills. But the other thing is that he disappears within 2 months of Richard II being murdered. Now, we don't know that Richard II was murdered, but we know damn well he was. He was sort of left to starve, or he was killed in some way in some cell by Henry IV, who usurps the throne. And I think that's really what this book is about. It's not really about... We'll never know what happened to Chaucer. I mean, maybe he fell off a ladder or something. We don't really know. But the thing is, to ask the question, it's a way of looking at that period, which was a most extraordinary period. You went from Richard II's rule, which was a very kind of liberal, free-thinking rule. You could write... The entertainment was getting really sexy and exciting.
Well, like Canterbury Tales.
Exactly, like the Canterbury Tales. And everybody... You could challenge anything. Everything. It was like the 60s in a way.
Yeah.
And you suddenly went almost overnight into well, was no, not Thatcher's England. You went into a sort of, it was more like Stalinist Russia. It was a period of repression when the lid was kept on everything. You weren't allowed to talk about religion, write about it in English. It became, even writing in English became very, very dubious.
Why? Why?
Well, it was Archbishop Arundel, Archbishop Thomas Arundel, who takes over, who's a very, very powerful eminence grise, the power behind the throne. He's kind of like the Henry Kissinger of his day, if you like. And he really gets Henry IV into power, in our opinion. But he's not secure. So like anybody, any clever politician, once he's in power, to keep power, he finds a common enemy. So like George Bush has sort of declared a war against terrorism, Archbishop Arundel declares a war against heresy. And basically heresy is anybody who disagrees with him or dares to criticise him, because he's Archbishop of Canterbury, you know.
Yeah.
It does sound like Bush.
Well, listen, before we
I just want to finish. So you theorise at the end of the book, you don't mind me saying this, do you?
No.
Right, that you think that this Archbishop banged up Chaucer on a trumped-up charge in his own private dungeon in Saltwood Castle in Kent, where Alan Clark MP used to live, and he starved him to death there.
Well, it's a possibility. It's one possible scenario. Maybe Chaucer was, mugged in the street and done away with like that. We don't. There was no official charge. Just Chaucer just suddenly quietly disappears.
One of the disappears.
And his manuscripts disappear as well.
Well, that's
Look,
dead suspicious.
we have a very appropriate Christmas present for you, which we would like you
My
to...
goodness me!
Because if you're right,
now.
and the Archbishop did murder Chaucer, this might fit the bill.
will solve. This will help.
Well, it won't solve. It'll be a memento.
This is the missing clue.
Yes,
But
I've never, because we're short of time, and it's only cheap paper. Exactly.
Oh, I've never been given a. Oh, that's brilliant. Hello, Archbishop Arundel. Yes, I'm Archbishop Arundel. And did you do it? Yes, I did it. All right.
Proof at last. Okay, well that's for your bedroom or bathroom or wherever you want to put it.
Great to see
okay.
you again.
Archbishop, happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas. Okay, we move on. Your home videos are pouring in now. It's great, isn't it? Your home videos are pouring in now to our